Caesar, welcome to the program. It's not your name and you are in disguise. How dangerous would it be if people knew who you were?
After 3 years, I have wanted to come out on the international media with my voice and with my real face. And I have the evidence and the documents and the pictures that show what the regime crimes are. But until today, I haven't had the chance to come out with my face.
Caesar, can you tell me what your job was and why you decided to publicize, to smuggle out these pictures?
I used to work inside the military police with a group of other photographers that have different specialties. Our job before the revolution, we took pictures of accidents. If somebody was killed, if there was a suicide, if there was someone who drowned, or if there was a fire. Part of our work in the forensic evidence section is to go and to document these accidents and to work with the judges and the detectives from the military police. But after the beginning of the revolution, after 2011, my work changed in a very fundamental way. We were no longer taking pictures of accidents or suicides or a drowning. All of our work, for me and for my team, was to take pictures of martyrs, of prisoners that were detained in the Assad jails.
When did you realize that your job had changed? And were there many, many more bodies that you were photographing on a regular basis than before the revolution?
There were small numbers at first, at the beginning of the revolution. We would take in a day 10 to 20 people, sometimes 5 to 10 bodies that we would get daily. But as the revolution went on, at the beginning of 2012, for example, the number started going up in a very marked way. We started taking photos of 20, then 30, until it came to a point where we were taking like 50 or more bodies every day by 2013, for example.
Caesar, we're seeing really horrible pictures. We have them projected on our wall here. These are the pictures that you smuggled out. What were the causes of death that you were recording?
Most of the bodies that we were taking photos of were of people that, by the way, were peaceful people. These are some of the people that just took part of the protests in Damascus and in Daraa, calling for freedom. There was signs of sometimes them being shot, and you can see many wounds in their heads, in their bodies, in their arms. We began to take photographs of bodies that had all these signs of all types of torture, of starvation for long periods of time, and there would be a doctor, and there would be a photographer, and there would be people from the security forces with us to go body by body, and we would number them based on the number that they were murdered in.
Caesar, did you ever dare ask your superiors what was going on?
Who doesn't live in Syria doesn't understand the situation of how much fear there existed within us. Even the pathologist had a high level, a high rank, but he was terrified of the intelligence. The intelligence officers that were with us, it was terrifying. It was not allowed for us to ask any question.
You were doing this for 2 years. What impact did it have on you personally?
I was horrified. I was terrified every day of the job that I was doing. I would look at the different horrendous ways that these individuals were slaughtered and tortured to death. The only crime they had was that they called for their own dignity and for their own freedom. And then I would picture my own self on the faces of these bodies and worry about my family being in their place. And many times I saw people that I knew personally, but because of the horrendous torture that they happened to them, it was hard for me to recognize them. The types of torture were the worst that I've ever seen. Very bloodthirsty regime.
So what made you take the incredible decision to copy these pictures and to smuggle them out?
Every human being has an amount of patience. And for almost 3 years, we're taking these pictures of bodies, of innocents being killed. And every single day, I was so afraid. Every morning, I would say goodbye to my wife thinking that I may not see her again. So the way it affected me is that there was a lot of pain for me seeing and doing what I'm doing. But if it was me or any other human being who has risked his life and the life of his family and friends and children, but if in my heart, if you have even an atom of humanity within your heart, you cannot stand by and let this happen without exposing them.
So how did you do it?
When I finished work, we would finish at night. I would take all of the pictures and all of the documents from the computer of the military police office, and I would put them on flash drives, very small flash drives and memory cards. Then I would take them to another location away from the office, and I had a friend, and he would take them and he would put them on his personal computer. And this was the way that I snuck out photos every single day. But this was very, very dangerous because I had to go through checkpoints all the time for the regime, and I would be searched many times. And so I was always very worried, and I would hide these flash drives and the memory cards in a place that's secretive on my body, for example, in my socks or in my underwear.
Caesar, you must know that President Assad denies everything that you have said, everything that you have shown. In an interview, he said, you can bring photos from anyone and say this is torture. Who took the pictures? Who is he? Nobody knows. There's no verification of any of this evidence. What do you say to President Assad, who wants the world not to believe you?
The pictures were taken by his own government. The way that the numbering and the processing is the way that the military police happened and the way they did it in Damascus. And there are independent investigators and others that have seen these pictures and were able to authenticate all of these photos. But he does not want any change. He does not want to leave authority.
Caesar, you're in the United States right now. You're trying to talk to members of Congress about this, and these pictures have been out since we first broke them, along with The Guardian, more than 2 years ago. Did it have the effect that you hoped?
I came afterwards to the United States and to Congress to speak to the American people because we believe in their democracy. And I showed all the proofs, all the documentations that shows the criminality of the regime. But unfortunately, my hopes and my expectations were way too high because I expected much more from the world. I spoke to the American people and to the White House under Obama's administration, and we told them that we have shown the killing and torture of so many of the Syrian people, and you cannot give back the lives to those that have lost it. But we ask you, out of your humanity, to stop the machinery of death. I still repeat it. We are asking to all the officials, to all the policymakers, to President Trump's White House, which we are hoping will do the right thing. We beg you to stop the machinery of death in Syria. You are America and the United States Congress and the American people. You always stand next to justice, and you stand with democracy. We ask you to stand with the Syrian people, the oppressed people that are calling for nothing except for justice.
Caesar, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you so much.